Hi, I'm Alex. I'm a trans guy who reads a lot of queer books. In this video, I am going to recommend over 50 trans book recommendations. Recently, I got a comment asking for specific trans book recs. This person was trying to complete the Trans Rights Readathon challenge on the Story Graph. With this challenge, you have to complete 10 prompts, and every book has to have trans rep. Their comment inspired me to do this video. I make a lot of book recommendation videos and I share queer and trans books, so I just naturally am sharing trans book recs. This made me realize that I don't have a dedicated video sharing trans book recs, so that's what this video is. Just a quick disclaimer, because I don't want to get comments of people asking me why I didn't recommend a specific book. This is just a list of books that I have read and are on my TBR based on the prompts that I am given. I will be recommending books based on the prompts from the Trans Rights Readathon Challenge and the yearly trans reading challenge that I participate in, created by Read with Reese. Both links will be down below. This is not every single trans book to ever exist. My friend Reese actually has a master list, so I'll try and link that down below as well if you just want more recommendations. I tend to read more contemporary, nonfiction, and memoirs. I also read all demographics, children's, middle grade, young adult, and adult, but that doesn't mean you won't find SFF in this video. I do have a couple recommendations, but the majority of these recommendations lean on the contemporary side. So this list might not suit your reading taste, and that's totally fine. If there's a specific trans book that you're looking for, I have a couple options for you. First, you can just drop a comment and somebody else in the comments might be able to help you out. And you can request a recommendation from me over on Bindery. It's totally free. The link is down below. You just have to sign up with your email, and the support helps me and my channel a lot. This video contains over 50 trans books, so I'm probably not going to be able to list every title in the description as I usually do. So I'm just going to make a page on my website, and I'll link it down below for you to find all of the titles. If you want to support me, Bookshop is the best way to do so. So my affiliate link is down below to that as well. Now to the book recs. I'm going to start out with the Trans Yearly Reading Challenge. This has more prompts, so I thought I would start with this first. There will be chapters down below if you want to skip around. A book with a trans man or trans boy main character. I'm a trans guy, so I have a lot of recommendations for this. First, I'm going to recommend the YA Pride and Prejudice retelling, Most Ardently by Gabe Cole novella. We follow Oliver Bennett. This is set in like Regency England, so Oliver is closeted, but this book has so much trans joy. One of my favorite trans YA books that I read this year is And They Were Roommates by Paige Powers. This is a messy YA book. I said it's similar to She's the Man because we have a trans boy who is at an all-boys boarding school, and he is roomed with his ex-boyfriend who knew him before he came out. This is not going to be for everybody, but I adored this. For middle grade, I have Too Bright to See by Kyle Lukoff. We follow Bug, a boy who's about to go to middle school. His uncle died. This talks a lot about grief and Bug coming to terms with his gender identity. It made me sob, so bring tissues if you're gonna pick this one up. Meet Cute Diary by Emery Lee follows Noah, a messy trans boy who runs a Tumblr blog based on T for T romances, but they're all fake. He wants to keep up the facade and he tries his best. When a rumor starts going around online that the blog is fake, Noah tries to save face. There is a T for T romance in this. If you like messy characters, I loved this. Stay Gold by Tobley McSmith is one of the very first books that I saw myself fully represented in. We follow Pony, who goes to a new school, he's stealth, and a lot of the things that he had to deal with. This is not a lighthearted book by any means. He goes through a lot of hardships, but there is some trans joy. Please look out for the trigger warnings because this can be a tough read. If you haven't heard of this already, this is Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas. The sequel is coming out in September. Follow a trans boy, Yadriel, who has always wanted to prove to his family that he is a brujo, but he has had a lot of pushback and his family just doesn't understand. To prove that he is a brujo, him and his cousin Maritza perform the Quinces ritual to summon a ghost, the ghost of his cousin. but he accidentally summons the ghost of his high school bad boy, Julian Diaz. This is such a wonderful book. It has great trans representation, and I adore it. A few other YA recommendations are Felix Ever After by Casing Calendar. We follow Felix, who gets outed at school, and his pre-transition pictures get plastered all over the school and how he navigates that. He's also being harassed by an anonymous person. Lots of hardships going on here, but I will say there is joy as well. The 30 Names of Night by Zane Jukada is a historical fiction following a trans boy who's grieving the loss of his mother and trying to solve a mystery while trying to find a name that suits him. This is such an incredible book. If you're looking for books with trans men, I recommend Edward Underhill. I loved The In-Between Bookstore, which was his adult debut, and The House of Now and Then recently came out, and I ate this up. The In-Between Bookstore follows Darby, a trans man in his 30s, who goes back to his small town, and when he goes to the bookshop that he used to work at in high school, his high school self is there. Such a moving book, very thought-provoking, and also made me very emotional. The House of Now and Then is a little similar. This makes for a great beach read. We follow Harlow, a trans man in his 30s who is trying to escape for the summer. He books a cheap cottage on Cape Cod that is owned by Dina, a trans woman, and when he gets to the cottage, his professor, his dad, and his ex are all in the house. Throughout the book, he is trying to make them go away. Lots of time loops in his adult fiction, and I really enjoy them. A book with a trans woman or trans girl main character. I have several. If you're looking for literary fiction, Disappoint Me by Nicola Dinan was really fantastic. I read it last year when it came out, and basically it is about a trans woman in her 30s who is dating a cis man, and I just pitch it as the audacity of cis men, learning that not all cis men are safe, even if they say that they respect trans women. Lots of mess in here. I really resonated with this book. For middle grade, I love Joy to the World by Kai Shepley and Lisa Bunker. This is about Joy, a girl in 6th grade who tries out for her school's cheerleading team. She makes the team, but she quickly learns that there is a law in place preventing trans girls and trans kids from participating in sports in the state of Texas. So basically, this is a book about a kid who has to be an activist very early in her life. I really enjoyed this one. Pet by Akweke Emezi is a middle grade fantasy about Jam, a trans girl with selective mutism. In the world of Lucille, all of the monsters are gone. That's what Jam thinks. But when she is in her mother's studio, a monster appears, and Jam has to figure out how to get this monster to go away and why they're here. What a wonderful book. Content warnings for child abuse. I loved this so much. There's also a prequel called Bitter, which I really want to pick up. I'll also recommend Glitch Girl by Rainey Oat. This is a middle grade written in verse following a trans girl in 2006-2007, navigating her ADHD diagnosis through the game Coaster Boss. It's similar to Roller Coaster Tycoon. A book with a non-binary main character. I'm going to share the 2 books that I own physically, and then I have some that I've read digitally. For middle grade, I recommend The Beautiful Something Else by Alder Van Otterloo. They are a fantastic trans author who writes middle grade. This is all about Sparrow, a non-binary kid who is coming to terms with their identity, and they're living with their estranged aunt while their mom gets some help. For fantasy, I recommend Costumes for Time Travelers by A.R. Capetta. This has subtle non-binary rep. Our main character is non-binary. It is set in the world of Pocket, which is the town where time travelers first meet. It is like their starting point. We follow Fawkes and Callisto. Fawkes is a time traveler. I believe that he is a trans boy, and we have Callisto, who is non-binary, and they are terrified of time traveling, and they work making costumes at their grandmother's costume shop. This is a light time travel book about trying to defeat fascism. For romance, I recommend Love and Other Disasters by Anita Kelly. This is set on a baking competition show following a non-binary character who is the first non-binary and trans person to be on this baking competition show, and they have a romance. romance. For cozy sci-fi, I recommend The Monk Robot Duology by Becky Chambers. We follow a tea monk who quits their life of being a tea monk. Now that they have quit their life of being a tea monk, they're trying to figure out what their purpose is. They end up meeting a robot along the way who is hilarious, so cute. I adore this series. I also recommend the novella Finna by Nino Cipri. This is a portal fantasy about two people who work at an IKEA-like store and they get sucked into a portal. The two have since broken up and it is them trying to just resolve their problems as they try to get out of this portal. What a fun book. Another novella is Read Between the Lines by B. Medina. This is a YA friends to lovers romance between two autistic lesbians. One is a trans girl and the other uses an AAC device to communicate. And of course, books that I've already recommended can work here as well. Glitch Girl has ADHD rep. I also recommend The Prospects by Katie Hoffman. This has ADHD and anxiety rep. This is a Rivals to Lovers baseball romance between Gene, the first trans man to play professional baseball, and his rival Luis, who is a shortstop. Him and Gene had a falling out in college. Gene resents him and they kiss and make up. Gene has ADHD and Luis has anxiety, and he has a service dog, Dodger, who helps him when he is having anxiety and panic attacks. I also recommend the novella Long Macchiatos and Monsters by Allison Evans. This is a T for T romance between two trans people, one who has a disfigured hand and the other has a prosthetic leg. This is set in Australia and it is a meet cute. They meet at a coffee shop and it's just their relationship. A book on my TBR is Time and Time Again by Chatham Greenfield. This is a T for T romance. It has time travel. A character uses a mobility device, you can see that on the cover, and it follows two queer disabled Jewish teens who find themselves stuck in a time loop and falling in love. A memoir by a trans person. Pretty by KB Brookins is a memoir about KB Brookins, a transmasc non-binary person. It talks about them being an adoptee and it especially focuses on religion. This is written in both prose and verse. Hijab Butch Blues by Lamia H is about Lamia, a non-binary queer Muslim person, and how they take passages from the Quran and relate it back to queerness and transness. This is such a stunning memoir. I also recommend Horse Barbie by Gina Rochero. I read this last year and I absolutely loved it. This follows Gina, a trans Filipino woman, and the impact that she had on trans women in the Philippines and trans women in the US in the beauty industry, especially modeling and beauty pageants. She is an overlooked person in history, in my opinion. Everybody needs to know about her. This is hard at times because she talks about being stealth as a trans woman in the 90s. This is not a lighthearted read by any means, but there is a ton of joy. For graphic memoirs, I recommend Welcome to St. Hell by Lewis Hancox. This is about Lewis's time in high school up until college and him figuring out that he is a trans guy. Just a warning, this does have the dead name on page and there is misgendering and some transphobia, but basically this is him just talking about what he would like to say to his younger self, and I love that. This is very funny as well. I also recommend the graphic memoir Homebody by Theo Parrish. This is about Theo learning that they are non-binary. A memoir on my TBR, that rhymed, is The Natural Mother of the Child, a memoir of non-binary parenthood by Chris Malcolm Black. For bite-sized memoirs, I have to recommend my favorite memoir of all time. This is Skate for Your Life by Leo Baker. Leo is a transmasc, non-binary person and pro skater. Basically, it is his life as a pro skater. It talks about the differences between men's and women's sports and how skating is really not that inclusive. This resonated with me a lot as somebody who grew up having a childhood fixed on skateboard culture. I watched a ton of Scarred on MTV and I always played Tony Hawk Pro Skater and I had a lot of tech decks. From the Pocket Change Collective, I also recommend Continuum by Chella Man. This memoir is about a deaf Chinese American genderqueer person and how they got to a place of self-acceptance. A general nonfiction book about trans people or trans history. Beyond Magenta, Trans Teens Speak by Susan Kuklin literally helped me come to terms with my gender identity, and so I really love this book and I'll recommend it anytime I can. Basically, it is just nonfiction and stories of trans teens talking about how they came to terms with their gender identity, and there are just a bunch of essays about being a trans teen. For my Transmasc people, I recommend Breathe by Maya Kobabe and Sarah Pietzmeyer, PhD. This is a graphic guide to chest binding. It talks about the history. We have some stories of trans people all over, trans elders to trans youth. I adore this and I'm so glad that this exists, and it does talk about chest binding. There are some tips and tricks. This is a book that I wish I had when I first came out. I also recommend the medical comic Gender is Really Strange by Teddy G. Gauthier. This is a medical comic all about gender. There is science-based information and it also talks about the cultural origins. This is so fascinating, very informative. A couple nonfiction on my TBR are The Other Olympians, Spectrum's Autistic Transgender People in Their Own Words by Maxfield Sparrow. I'll also add Both and Trans and Gender Non-Conforming Writers of Color. A book with a trans asexual or aromantic main character. I don't read enough asexual and aromantic work. Aromantic especially, I need to be better at reading these identities. But I do have 2 books that are on my TBR, so I figured that I would add them here. The Many Half-Lived Lives of Sam Sylvester by Maya McGregor has a non-binary main character who is asexual, and they are autistic as well. It's a murder mystery with ghosts. Tell Me How It Ends by Quentin Lee features LGBTQ+, disabled, neurodivergent, cultural, and mental health representation. The main character is a lesbian tarot reader with anxiety and autism. The second main character, Marin, is an aromantic, asexual, non-binary person with ADHD. I also recently got a comment about Compound Fracture by Andrew Joseph White, which is a trans horror, and somebody mentioned that it has a romantic rep, and this person was so happy to feel represented. The next 3 prompts are to read a book with a BIPOC trans main character written by a BIPOC trans author. I have several recommendations, so I'm just gonna rapid fire them here. Felix Ever After by Kaysen Callender, Pet by Akweke Emezi, and Freshwater by Akweke Emezi. This is fantastic. I read it last year and it is just beautifully written. The Passing Playbook by Isaac Fitzsimons would work as well. Disappoint Me by Nicola Dinan would work here as well. The author is Malaysian and Chinese, and her main character is Chinese. I know she writes her identity in her novels. Those are a few of my recommendations. Of course, it does not encompass every trans author who is BIPOC. I do have several Indigenous authors on this list as well, so I don't want to forget them when we're talking about the BIPOC acronym. To complete this reading challenge, you must complete all 10 prompts. So those were the 10 prompts, but there are some bonus ones, so I'm going to share recommendations for those as well. First up is poetry collections by trans people. I don't read poetry as much anymore, but when I did, I read them by trans people, and I have a few favorites. Grief Slut by Evelyn Berry is from a trans woman. There's not a theme to this poetry collection, but there are poems about transness, masculinity, and childhood. There are also some poems about grief and friendship. My favorite poetry collection is There Are Trans People Here by H. Melt. This is a wonderful poetry collection. It's liberating and full of trans joy. If you are feeling very hopeless right now, I highly recommend to pick this up. It Was Never Going to Be Okay by Jay Simpson is from an Indigenous and Two-Spirit person, and Disintegrate, Dissociate by Ariel Twist is from an Indigenous trans woman. Both of these talk about transness and specifically the trans body. If you're enjoying this video, give it a like and hit subscribe. I would love to have you a part of my community. I talk about queer books all the time on this channel, so I would love to have you. And if you're craving more queer books in publishing, I am on a mission to shake up the publishing industry and launch my own imprint through Bindery. When I gain enough monetary subscribers, I will be able to launch my own imprint dedicated to publishing the queer and trans books I wish existed. When that time comes, all of my subscribers will be able to help me on this journey. You'll be able to vote on what books I acquire, what the cover looks like, and you'll have your name in the acknowledgements. Bindery is doing such a cool thing. I have seen so many of my friends be successful through this. I would love to be able to go into my local independent bookstore and say that a book in there was published by me. It is my goal to let publishing know that we want queer and trans books, messy characters, romances, whatever it is. I want to be able to publish it. And so if you want to help me out with that, it is as low as $5. The link is down below. There are so many perks over on Bindery. I have a weekly newsletter where I share what I'm currently reading, filming, and my schedule for the week. Paid members get an extended version where I just talk about what I'm currently enjoying and watching, as well as music I'm listening to and games I've been playing. Free members also get access to Discord and a shorter version of my weekly newsletter, which is just what I'm reading, filming, and my schedule for the week. Some members on my Discord just started a read-along for Heartstopper. Some are rereading it in anticipation for the final volume and the movie coming out in July. Others are reading it for the first time. If you're also rereading Heartstopper or have been planning to, you should definitely get in on that. The link to Bindery is down below. Any and all support helps me out. I would love to see you over there. Now let's get back to the video. Next is to read a graphic novel by a trans person. I already mentioned Welcome to St. Hell by Louise Hancox. I'll also recommend Stone Fruit by Lee Lay. This is about religion and we have a sapphic romance. There is a trans woman who is navigating familial issues and religion. I'll also recommend Magical Boy by The Cow. This is basically a trans superhero. Read a book with a T for T romance. T for T means trans for trans. Both people in this relationship are trans. I love The Feeling of Falling in Love by Mason Deaver. It's a YA between a trans boy and a non-binary person. The non-binary person comes out in this book and it's them discovering their gender identity. This is such a messy book and I adore it. I recommend anything by TJ Alexander. This is their T for T romance called A Gentleman's Gentleman. It is a historical fiction set in Regency England between a lord and his valet. This is so good. On my TBR is Ship Happens by Mason Deaver. It comes out in August and it is a T for T second chance romance between two exes who are stuck on a cruise ship together. I'm so excited to read this. I'll also recommend Caroline's Heart by S.A. Chant. This is a T for T romance between a trans woman and a trans man. It's a Western. When Cecily's lover, Caroline, dies, she keeps her heart in hopes that she can use her magical powers to resurrect this heart and get Caroline back. But when a trans man in the saloon is injured, Caroline uses the heart to help him. This is such a beautiful love story. It is phenomenal. I absolutely adore it. Highly recommend. Long Macchiatos and Monsters can work here as well because that's a T for T romance. Next is a book with a queer trans man main character, Second Chances in Newport Stephen by TJ Alexander. I am not a big fan of second chance romances. I know I just said I have one on my TBR, but I really enjoyed this one. Our main character Eli is home for the holidays, but he doesn't have the heart to tell his parents that he doesn't have a job lined up. He works in TV as a writer. He's back in Florida as a proud out trans man when he bumps into Nick, his high school ex, at the grocery store. That's why I like this, because the second chance romance makes sense. A Gentleman's Gentleman could work here, and I'll recommend Peter Darling and Coffee Boy by S.A. Chant. Any of their books can work for this. Coffee Boy is a workplace romance between a queer trans man and his coworker, I believe it's his boss, And Peter Darling is a Peter Pan retelling between Peter, who was formerly Wendy Darling, and Captain Hook. You're welcome. The next bonus prompt is to read a book with a queer trans woman main character. The Transition Baby by Tori Peters could work here. This is a literary fiction about a trans woman who has detransitioned and she gets another woman pregnant, and it is just how she navigates life along with her former partner. It's very messy. I read it last year and I really enjoyed it, and I have had many trans women and trans femme people say that they really appreciated that book. The graphic novel Stone Fruit by Lee Lay could work here as well. On my TBR is Hot Girls with Balls by Benedict Wen, and this is a volleyball book featuring trans women. I also have Best Woman by Rose DeMue on my TBR. The best woman in her brother's wedding tells a little white lie in her quest to get the girl, her lifelong crush and the maid of honor, in this wildly entertaining debut novel about bad decisions and life's messiest transitions. I've heard that the main character is a trans woman. And the last prompt for the Trans Yearly Reading Challenge is to read a book with a trans main character that is indie. Read between the lines could work for this as well. Alright, I'm going to take a break for myself to have some lunch, and then I will resume this video and get to the second half of recommendations for the Trans Rights Readathon. For you, it's the next clip. For me, it's the next day. Let's go over the Trans Rights Readathon prompts. They overlap with the Trans Yearly Reading Challenge prompts, so I do have additional recommendations, and I'll also just hold up some of the books that I've already referenced. The first prompt for the Trans Rights Readathon Challenge is Transmasc and trans man representation. I have shared so many of my favorites here. I don't even think I've scratched the surface, but here are some books that you can read for this prompt. The Prospects by Katie Hoffman, A Gentleman's Gentleman by T.J. Alexander, and Second Chances in Newport Stephen by T.J. Alexander. And a book that I've recently read is Hell Followed With Us by Andrew Joseph White. It's a YA trans horror about evangelicalism, religious trauma, monsters. So if you're looking for horror, I highly recommend this. Next is Transfemme and Trans Woman Rep. I have recommended Detransition Baby, which would work here, but I have two books on my TBR that I'll quickly mention. Who I Was With Her by Nita Tyndall is a YA with a trans girl protagonist. There are two things that Corinne Parker knows to be true: that she is in love with Maggie Bailey, the captain of the rival high school's cross-country team, and her secret girlfriend of a year, and that she isn't ready for anyone to know she's bisexual. But then Maggie dies, and Corinne quickly learns that the only thing worse than losing Maggie is being left heartbroken over a relationship no one knows existed. I've put this off for a while because car accidents are very triggering for me to read in books, but I'm doing better now, and I think that I will be able to finally read this book. It sounds so heartbreaking, and I've heard really good things about it. I'll also share Awakened by A.E. Osworth. This is a trans witchy book. A coven of trans witches battle an evil AI in the magical coming of middle-age romp about loss, love, drag shows, and late capitalism. This sounds amazing. Next is Nonbinary, Agender, Genderqueer, and Other Gender Expansive Rep. I recommend the middle grade Both Can Be True by Jules Machias. It has a gender fluid main character, and I think the way that it explores and explains gender fluidity and transness is done very well. The Heartbreak Bakery by A.R. Capetta has an agender main character with no pronouns. Our main character Sid gets broken up with, and Sid decides to make brownies, but Sid's brownies start to break everybody up in town. This is such a fun and playful book as Sid is trying to figure out Sid's identity. There's a Transmasc side character, we have lots of queerness, and I just really enjoy this one. It also has recipes. I've made the brownies from this, and it's so good. Next is Intersectional Trans Rep Outside of Your Own Experience. Any book that I've mentioned in this video could work for you depending on what your lived experiences are. If you're looking for something specific, comment it down below. Next is Two-Spirit, Indigiqueer, and Indigenous Gender Expansive Rep. I've already mentioned Jay Simpson. They are a Two-Spirit poet, but but I do have a couple recommendations for this prompt. A History of My Brief Body by Billy Ray Belcourt is fantastic. It's a short, like, essay type of thing about the body. I thought it was fantastic. For fiction, I recommend Johnny Appleseed by Joshua Whitehead. Johnny is a 20-something two-spirit Indigiqueer just living his life, paying his bills with his job as an online sex worker, and hanging out with his friends. When his mom's boyfriend dies, he has a week to find enough money to get back to the res for the funeral. Over the course of the week, he goes about his life, reflects on his childhood, and shares memories of his mom and grandmother. It's a thoughtful, introspective novel about a character with a singular voice pulsing with life. I absolutely love this. I haven't read it in a while, so that's why I'm referencing the blurb, but trust me, it's fantastic. Next is a book featuring trans joy, love, and or resistance. I've recommended several romances in here. The majority of books in this list have trans joy. I love to recommend books with trans joy because as a trans person myself, I don't like reading books that feel like they weren't written for me and are going to make me uncomfortable. Of course, everybody's triggers are different, but trust that the majority of books in this list do have trans joy. For this prompt, I want to recommend a romance that's on my TBR. Make Room for Love by Darcy Liao. This is a steamy, slow burn romance starring a trans woman discovering she's bi and finding her happily ever after. For resistance, I recommend Fierce Femmes and Notorious Liars by Kai Cheng Tom. Next is a book about trans youth and or imagining trans futures. I've recommended several middle grade and YA books in this video, so you could probably find something, but I'll just go through them very quickly. Too Bright to See by Kyle Lukoff, The Beautiful Something Else by Alder Van Otterloo, and Pet by Akweke Emezi. If you're looking for nonfiction, Beyond Magenta would work perfectly here. Next is a book featuring trans elders or a trans history book. Specifically, a work by or about trans elders like a memoir or biography or a trans history book. Obviously, you can interpret this anyway. I am going to mention The House of Now and Then by Edward Underhill. I think this worked here because it talks a lot about the history of the trans community as Harlow meets Dina and her group of friends who are trans elders, so this would definitely work here. Detransition Baby by Tori Peters could work as well, and the memoir Horse Barbie by Gina Rochero that I've already mentioned. On my TBR, I have the autobiography, A Two-Spirit Journey, the autobiography of a lesbian Ojibwa Cree elder by Ma Ni Chikabi. And the last prompt is a recommendation from a friend. If you don't have any friends in your life that read queer and trans books, you can just say that Alex recommended a book to you, and then you can check it off that way. And those are my trans book recommendations. Thanks so much for sticking with me. This was a very long video, so if you did enjoy it, give it a like and hit subscribe to join my community. I recommend queer and trans books all the time on this channel, so I'd love to have you. A special thank you to my top members on Patreon and Bindery. Thank you so much for your support. I have gotten several new folks over on Bindery as monetary subscribers, and I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. It is my dream to have my own imprint, and I really hope that we can do this together. If you would like to support me on Bindery, the link is down below. If you'd like to watch more, YouTube thinks you'll like this video, and you can subscribe there. Bye.